Thank you for allowing me into your homes for this 39th episode of Season 3 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And I want to start by making a couple of announcements or recapping a few things. Starting with this past Wednesday's telecom meeting that took place at the One Texas Center. I want to first thank everybody that took the time and trouble to come down there. The place was definitely overflow capacity. They actually had to move the chairs up to make room for the overflow people coming in to the meeting. And it was a very intense and somewhat heated exchange at times. It was interesting. Alex was there, obviously. We got to meet Alex's father. That was very interesting, and that was a pleasure indeed. And also some folks with the Republic Broadcast Network, John Staten Miller and Jack Blood, also took the time to come out and speak. And I was very honored by that because those guys live out in Williamson County. They don't even get ACTV, but yet they took the time and trouble to come into town to speak and show, let their numbers be shown, and I was really appreciative of that. I'd had a chance to speak with Jack Blood briefly. Some may be familiar with his radio program on RBN, Republic Broadcast Network. He's done a little bit of TV. He's been on the Bob Dacey Show. He's going to be doing the Texas Frontline, filling in for that show this upcoming Tuesday from 6 to 7 on Channel 10. And he's going to be doing a stint on the 15th on George Humphrey's show, Common Sense. That's 8 p.m., Channel 16 on Wednesday. That does, however, coincide with our metaphysical philosophical meeting that we here at Esoteric Science Roundtable and the fine folks over at Therefore I Am, Jeff Contreras and crew, co-host each third Wednesday of the month. And so that's going to fall on the 15th for this month. And we meet always upstairs, 8 p.m., it's very casual, very relaxed. Just come up and start having a conversation, join in on a conversation, or if you want to just hang out and just listen to what's going on and just be more of an observer or a wallflower, that's certainly welcome as well. We encourage anybody that's interested in the subjects that we bring up on our respective shows, or anybody that just wants to come out and hang out, please do so. We encourage everyone to come out. Also, I just want to reiterate that Jack Blood is going to be on our show in the near future, and we'll get the details of that when that happens. I'm looking forward to that interview. That should be fun. The Trailer Park Show picnic is this Saturday, tomorrow, September 11th, and it should be at Garrison Park. And you could probably go to the Trailer Park website for more details, and I'm not sure who else you want to call on that, but it should be Garrison Park, probably around 11, noonish, something like that. Again, the Metaphysical Philosophical is this Wednesday, next Wednesday. There is going to be another producers meeting upcoming for the producers at ACTV. It's going to be here at the ACTV facility, 1143 Northwestern. It's going to be Tuesday the 14th from 6 p.m. to probably about 8 p.m. And it's going to be outside in the picnic tables outside of ACTV. So anybody that's interested in participating in that particular meeting or just listening in, that again is next Tuesday from 6 to 8 out front of the ACTV building here in lovely East Austin, 1143 Northwestern. Also, I want to make another real quick thanks, and these little notebooks that I use, some people that watch the show for a really long time took the opportunity to grab me one of these notebooks. So this is actually the third one I'm starting, and this is my second show that I'm putting in this notebook. So I want to thank Mike Z and Kirsten for being so intuitive to grab me this notebook, and I'm really very thankful for that. That was really a thoughtful gift, and I'm very appreciative of that. I think that's all I need to get into as far as any kind of announcements, what have you. Okay, today's show topic is going to be death and life. Most people would probably recognize that reversed life and death, and that's what we know more commonly in the West, and that's more what we're accustomed to, is that we live and we die, period, end of statement. Well, I would choose to believe in reincarnation, and so I look at it as after death, there's a period of rest, and then there is a life, a new life, and so that's an ongoing cycle. It's a cycle of rebirth. It's based on other laws, the law of attraction, laws of karma, laws of cause and effect, that dictate and determine a lot of these various aspects of the hows and whys of the duration of a particular life and the subsequent time that is spent in the afterworld condition. there are a lot of determining factors that go into how long and again, the duration and different qualitative aspects and different perspectives that are experienced when one does go through these different phases of life, death, life, and on and on. And so the different ideas that have pervaded mankind's thinking throughout time have led to two distinct, definite beliefs that either there is life and death, period, end of statement, or that there is, again, the life-death cycle. And more so the religious tradition or the cultural tradition of the Eastern societies embraces the idea of reincarnation, whereas the West does not acknowledge or recognize the idea that there is another existence after our one-shot deal at this Earth life. So the people in the East don't really have such negative views towards death and so many fearful views towards death that we hold in the West, because they see this is an endless chain of lives, that we have endless opportunities to perfect our human condition throughout time. And so they take these kind of things into consideration. Also, a lot of cultures in the East use the process of cremation after death. And this is because the energy and the life essence that is actually you, the inner aspect of you, the soul nature, is bound and caught up in tied to our fleshly nature and our personality existence. And so the longer this shell stays intact and doesn't disperse itself, the longer that magnetic pull is going to attract the soul nature and keep it held, closer to the earth plane as a result of that relation. And so that is why the tradition of cremation in the East is so prevalent, because this allows for the quick dissipation, the rapid dissipation of this physical, dense vehicle. And this isn't really anything that's permanent for us anyway. This is a very transitory vehicle that we occupy, and so that is understood more so in the East. And so the reverence is not placed on the physical body so much. It's largely considered a non-factor, whereas in the West, the personality nature is revered much more, and it's catered to a lot more than it is in the East. And so in the East, the idea of the rapid dissipation of the body is practiced so that we can free ourselves for a more rapid journey into the afterlife experience, and so we could take fuller advantage of those conditions. When we do die, there's a certain process that takes place with the withdrawing of the life force from the body, and that is done through the blood system, the endocrine system or the gland system, and also through the nervous system. And so there's a reduction or a withdrawing of the life force gradually as that process takes place. Or in the case of a sudden accident where there's like a quick electric jolt, and then there is just a cessation of existence. That the idea also that one may experience, for instance, if one is subject to death by burning or drowning, that one is going to experience the whole suffering that would entail. Whether that, if that was a burning to death, that you would feel, every flicker of flame burning your flesh to the marrow of your bones. And that's not the case. You get to a certain point where you're going to lose consciousness, and you're going to again start to make that recession, and the fire nature is only going to help the release, because again it's going to destroy the physical vehicle. But again, if you were to get hit suddenly by a truck and just instantly check out in that respect, again it would be more akin to an electric jolt, and you might perhaps, as you see the truck oncoming, have that imminent sense of terror that I know I'm going to die now, and you're gone. And then again, the electric jolt and the true part of us can start to withdraw itself from the dense physical and begin its afterlife journey. The same situation with sleep and death take place in many respects. The withdrawing from the dense physical in the sleep state is a bit different in the sense that our energy body, our etheric nature, stays intact, and that keeps the blood flowing through the veins and what have you, keeps the circulatory system running, and it keeps our body running kind of like an idol in a sense, while we are, the real part of us is away doing whatever we may be doing on the astral plane or the emotional plane, which is the plane whereon we find ourselves during sleep and death. It's the same locality. In the East, it's known as Devachan, and that is where we find ourselves after we're freshly deceased, or every night upon, receding into the sleep time. And so this is a very familiar process to us. We die daily in that respect when we go to sleep each night, and then we awaken and we regain that consciousness aspect. And so there's a constant process of that going on from lifetime to lifetime. So the death experience in actuality is nothing new. It's just the forgetting that takes place when we come into the new incarnation that prevents us from, understanding and having a full grasp on this process, so that the fear factor is non-existent. But that is part of our human existence, is to experience the fear and experience the forgetting, so that we can start learning lessons during each existence, and that experience can culminate into a greater life experience as we progress and move through the various lives. And so again, the same location is visited upon sleep or death. With death, there is a withdrawing of the so-called sutratma, another Eastern term, which is also known as the silver cord. That is the life cord. Many people experience astral travel, and the sutratma, the silver cord, stays intact, and they can envision themselves going far, far, far from the physical vessel. And they can look down, and they can see their physical body lying on the hospital bed, or in the bed in their bedroom, or wherever they may be lying. But the silver cord stays intact, and the silver cord can stretch out like an innumerable distance. It's kind of like the dog chain, that's the coil dog chain that rolls up into the little plastic kind of receptacle thing that just reels out and reels back in. The silver cord is akin to that, although it's just endless in its length, and so we can really stretch it for boundless lengths. Also, perception as far as time and distance, and even the way we perceive the human language on the physical plane. Our senses are not, the way our senses work, and they're not really senses so much, the way our intuition and our sensory apparatus, I'll use that term, functions and operates on the astral or the emotional plane is different than it does on the physical plane. And so we can't, when there's spirit communication and things of that nature, when it does take a genuine form, oftentimes the way that the communication takes place is you can't just use regular speech, because the entity or the spirit or whatever would not really fully understand in those terms. And so you might get answers back in symbols, or the words may not tend to make sense, but they would be taken in a symbolic sense, paint the picture of what the intent or the thought on the person on the other side would be. And so that's experienced on occasion. Also, again, time, depth perception, things of that nature are non-existent. And so things are not non-linear. They're four-dimensional, and outside of that, when we move into these other realms. And so that's why we can expand ourselves and travel quite a ways from the dense physical under these circumstances and in these conditions, whether that be, again, either during the sleeping hours or during the death process, that we remove ourselves from the physical on a more permanent status. And then also considering the idea of Devachan, there is really no separate heaven, hell, or even as the Catholics consider a purgatory state. Everything is on one plane, if you will, or one state of awareness or existence, and that is, again, either known as the astral or the emotional plane. It's two terms for the same thing. It's the plane of our desires. It's where that aspect of us emanates from and originates from, and that's where the love nature resides as well. The higher aspects of the astral plane are the pure love aspects of our human unfolding and our planetary and systemic unfolding as well. It expands out to that large of a degree. And so the astral plane or the emotional plane is sevenfold, as are so many things in manifestation. And that's just a further reflection of that condition. And so as we find ourselves fully receded from the physical nature and from our lower emotional nature and from our concrete mind, then we can move ourselves into, we can function from a soul awareness, and we will be residing again on this astral or emotional plane condition or state of awareness, or Devachan if you want to use the Eastern term. Again, it breaks down more so to polarity. You're going to have the most densified members or occupants of the astral plane or the afterlife condition closer to the earth nature, and there it's going to be the densest, lowest portion of the astral plane, and that would be akin to hell for so many. When I was in my younger day, I would experiment a little bit with a Ouija board, and we would ask the whatever we were contacting, where are you? And so many times it would come back, hell, hell, hell. And so these earthbound, for the most part, spirits, not really spirit, that's not the proper term, because a spirit is much higher than the portion that we're speaking of, but the remnant that is tied to the soul would be residing in these lower aspects of the afterlife condition. And so they're, again, closer to the earth, and this is where you get the ghost phenomenon and some of the poltergeist phenomenon and some of this, the haunting type activity, and some of the paranormal activity that takes place with ghosts and some of that related stuff that's been reported on, and science is starting to get a grasp of. And ultimately, science will be able to prove the existence of the soul, I would say within my lifetime, certainly. And so I think a lot of us have that to look forward to, that's going to open up the doors of science tremendously and allow us to eliminate some of the misconceptions we have about life, death, life, and that transition. Let's see. And so we will move gradually through the emotional plane and center ourselves in our soul nature ultimately as we move through the afterworld condition. Sometimes, again, in the case of the sudden accident or other instances where people have a real material draw to certain things or certain people of the earth life, they may not in some cases even realize that they've passed away. They may think that they're still on the earth plane and they still go to work every day and they still go through their everyday normal routine as if they were still alive, and it may take them some time to come to the realization that they are actually indeed dead. And this is the work of some of the psychics that truly have the ability and have the calling to work selflessly. And there are a couple. I would say James von Prague is the prime example that I'm aware of. There are a lot of others that are charlatans, but he actually helps out and tries to help these spirits move on and things of that nature. And that might be familiar to some people, that the idea of contacting these spirits and telling them, hey, by the way, you're dead, you need to go on to your further evolution. You know, you're holding up your own progress by staying in this situation and going through this loop. A ghost or haunting phenomenon is often like a tape loop. It's just a recurring energy point that loops through time over and over again. Let's see, during suicide, that's one thing I want to touch upon. Esoteric doctrine holds that the person that commits suicide is bound to, again, these denser, lower astral regions, much closer to the earth plane, for the remainder of their natural life. And so if they would have lived to be 37, 73, whatever the case may be, they would have to stay close to the earth plane for the remainder of that duration before they could start to make the break into a greater expansion of awareness and make their way into further higher aspects of the astral condition, the afterlife condition. And so there's a process that takes place of that, and that again contributes to the haunting phenomenon in some cases. But there are some cases in which the suicide victims, once they realize the condition that they're in and they realize what they've done and that they're bound to this state, once they find other suicide victims coming into this area or this arena or this point of awareness, they can help them and they can preach to them in a sense, or minister to them and give them some pointers and heads up and help them to make the transition. And that's part of what takes place on the astral plane. Also, many individuals, when they're asleep at night, work and do some sort of helping, healing, teaching, or they may be taught themselves, because they're also in this astral condition. We're able to be much more receptive to higher energies coming in, as well as negative, and that we have natural protections built in to prevent the lower entities from bothering us while we sleep or while we travel and while we do our dream state work. There are, again, protections that are built in, and it also boils down to awareness. The more aware one is and the more experienced one is on these planes, the more one can work effectively without being hindered by being nagged by these lesser entities, or being preoccupied or distracted, or perhaps having some distortions aimed at them by virtue of their mischievous ways or their nefarious ways in some cases. And so that's another pitfall that is a condition. There are many occupants on the astral planes, and so that's something that people become more aware of as they make the rounds more so and more so. And so the duration, again, of a normal death is going to depend. It's going to depend on the state of awareness, your point of evolution, if you want to use that term, and also what kind of attraction you held to the physical plane. It stands to reason that the less materially bound individuals are more spiritual. That's not always the case. That doesn't hold fast and true in every instance and situation, but oftentimes the people that are less bound to material things they travel light, and so in that sense, they are light and more receptive to light and more receptive to the higher aspects of the astral realms, and so again, the attraction is going to depend. Some people are more polarized in their emotional nature, and they're going to stay on the astral plane for a longer period of time. The more mentally predisposed and those that have maintained or attained some higher state of evolution and awareness and understanding will, before too terribly long and in a much more rapid fashion, dissipate the physical nature and locate and center their consciousness on the mental plane. And that's not the case for all of humanity. Different levels of humanity, again, it's a graded kind of situation where the denser settles on the bottom, if you will, and the lower, or the lesser, lighter, rises to the top. Now again, location and stacking things on top of each other in linear fashion is not really adequate. It's more of a locality. It's not like you're climbing a ladder to get from one to the next. It's more like, as your mind is able to perceive, you project yourself to these places, these aspects of this astral realm. And so that again depends on point of evolution and point of familiarity with that terrain that one is embarking upon. Now, after this duration of the afterlife is complete, and it's going to vary for some people, it's going to vary for all people, actually, from person to person, as to how much of a time they stay in the afterlife condition. In many cases, the person that's a bit more spiritually inclined is going to stay in the mental plane realm a bit longer, and the duration that they're away from the earth plane is going to exceed or extend a bit longer than some person that's a bit less evolved. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The lesser evolved person needs more experience, so they're going to run a little faster. They're going to have lives that are going to allow for maybe not super lengthy lives, but a more rapid succession of lives, and allowing for them to come in again more rapidly to make quicker progress in that respect. The person that's of a more aspiring or spiritually inclined nature is going to be more at home on the mental plane, and so they're going to reside there a bit longer, and they're going to be able to take in and allow and assimilate that condition to permeate them more so and to precipitate down to their awareness and understanding. And so they make more use of an extended stay, and it allows them to gain much more than they would be able to gain on the physical plane in some cases. Sometimes if a person has a mission to accomplish, though, and they're doing some kind of spiritual work, or they have some cause that needs to be met, some deadline or some duty or obligation that needs to be considered, these laws, the laws of karma, cause and effect, laws of attraction, all these things are malleable and mutable and yielding to conditions. So even though these are fixed rules, there are conditions or qualities within these rules that allow for flexibility. For instance, if you have a karmic debt to pay, you're not going to necessarily pay it back in the very next lifetime and encounter the same people that you wronged or that wronged you to be able to do that, to be able to collect or to finish off the debt, to settle the debt. It may take several lifetimes for that cycle to make its way back, and that always depends from, again, person to person and group to group. We find ourselves reincarnating within family ties, group ties, national ties, and so we'll make a few runs in this as being American, for instance, or being Italian, or being from Brazil, whatever the case may be. And also, same with gender. We'll be male for several incarnations, or female for several incarnations. When you get instances of homosexuality and the gender bender kind of mentality that some folks exhibit, or they seem to be caught between two sexes in some cases, you often find that is part of a needed adjustment that needs to be implemented so there can be a balancing between the male and the female polarity, or sometimes, again, it's just they get caught between two conditions, and that's a transition point between going from male to female, or vice versa. And so that exhibits and demonstrates itself in varying capacities, differing and varying from individual to individual, and culture to culture for that matter as well. So all of these factors help determine all of these variables for afterlife, the duration of the stay, and how quickly one returns to the earth plane, and where and by whom you choose to be born. The soul, once it's nearing closer to the earth plane, it realizes that it's going to have to depart its home to be subject to the animal flesh, man, physical nature. And then it prepares itself in the proper fashion, just as those that are ready for death can start to make the process of withdrawal and start to, make it more of a ritual and die with dignity, if you will, and make it more of a natural process, rather than freak out that, oh, grandpa's dying, he's on his deathbed, and we know he's going to go soon, or something like that. In the future, it will be more a process that will be, again, more of a ritualistic thing, and it'll be more of a celebration than a reason for sorrow. And that's going to be in the not too distant future. I see that happening for us. So again, choices in return. The karmic ties are going to bind us to certain groups of people, and that's also part of the forgetting aspect of going from lifetime to lifetime. If you were to, again, considering that the duration for lives from one person incarnating to the next is not going to evenly match up. If you went to high school with this guy, and you guys, even if you die at the same time, let's say you go to high school with these people and you die in a car accident. Does that mean both people are going to have the same duration and come back at the same time in the same location? Not necessarily. It's going to depend on different things. So this kind of fluctuation allows for a lot of variables. And so in some cases, your girlfriend in one life or your wife in one life may be your mother in another. And I know that sounds a bit convoluted and strange, but that is indeed what takes place. And that's why that's another reason. That's not the greatest reason, but that is another portion of the forgetting that takes place, in that we lose our memory of the past lives so that we can continue to grow. And again, sometimes we need the experience with the same group of people, so we'll stay with that group for some time, and that could easily take place, that those relations could swap from lifetime to lifetime. And that's just part of an evolutionary process. Once we discard the suit and we're just merely a soul, we're all souls, and there is no gender attributed or ascribed to the soul. And so that's why we can, go from one to the other with relative ease from lifetime to lifetime. Again, as I said earlier, you tend to stay with one polarity for some time, gain that experience, and then shift over. And then that's back and forth as well. So also racial, you may be black one time, white another time, Hispanic another time, and believe me, we've all gone through these different races many times. So the idea of prejudice towards another race is really, really absurd when you understand karma and reincarnation, because we understand we've been all these other races before, and we'll be these other races again in the future. It's part of the evolutionary process to say that, oh, you've reached this race. Now you're Caucasian. You've reached the cream of the crop for this cycle, so you've reached the culmination. That's nowhere near the truth. You're going to find yourself going through other experiences still, because in the future we won't look at one racial type as being set above the others. We're going to be looking at things as far as quality of mind and what a person is composed of internally as opposed to externally. And so a lot of these prejudice ideas will fall to the wayside, again, once the scientific discovery of the nature of the soul is made concrete and factual in all the realms of human endeavor, scientific and otherwise, religious and otherwise. So again, our obligations to come back to a certain body bring us back, and we can observe who will be good parents for us and for our experiences. So we take into consideration what obligations do we have that we need to fulfill, what area am I going to be revisiting, and in that area, who are the good potential parents that are going to give me the life experience. Now, we may be able to perceive that, oh, these parents are going to have a divorce when I'm age 3, or, any tragic thing you could possibly comprehend and think of as a potential. All these things are factored in at that level. And so the everything is factored in that respect until the decision is made to pick the particular parents that are going to offer up the best opportunity. And so that takes place over and over again, time and time again, that we find ourselves waiting to get the best opportunity. And sometimes they may have to wait an extended stay in the Devachan arena until the right combination comes along. And that certainly does take place. And so that could potentially, speed up or delay the process, certainly. Let's see, also, getting back to the idea about the West versus the East, and the ideas, how they perceive life and death. Now, certainly in the West, life is, for the most part, considered a one-shot deal, and there is much fear that's built into our culture in relation to the ideas of death. And so we tend to fear the idea that this physical vessel will no longer be around, and that we will perhaps face a violent termination. Some people have that constant fear that either themselves or their loved ones are gonna have an accident, or the what-if thinking that constantly ties us to a more material outlook on our physical vessel or vehicle. And so again, the East is pointing the way to a certain degree in allowing us or helping us to understand the transitory nature of the physical vehicle. The suit of clothes that we're wearing is temporary. When we come back into incarnation, we try on a whole brand new suit of clothes. And so we have one more suit to add to our wardrobe. Our wardrobe is quite extensive and quite large, and it has styles that vary all the way back through all the various ages. And so we could probably have the equivalent of like a caveman suit lined up in there, and all the way through all the different all the different dress and decor of the preceding cultures and civilizations. And so we find that culmination taking place, and we could consider the wardrobe of past bodies that we've worn, but that's really that would be like having a collection of shells, a shell collection without looking at the mollusk that lived inside, or having even having a pearl. It's something that is a remnant or remembrance of something living, but it's not the actual life essence or the life force that was attached to that particular creature. And so, again, the shell nature is how I feel that would be helpful to consider our physical vehicle, and that it is just transitory, and that once the usefulness has passed, then we're going to find our exit. And if the usefulness is past and we find ourselves having a quick exit, like via getting hit by a truck or something, when our time is up, we go. It doesn't matter necessarily how we go. It's just that when circumstances have finalized and we've done what we can on the earth plane, then it's time to move on. And so some death circumstance will arise in order for us to enable that process to continue forward. And so, again, to be too hung up on any one physical body, I feel like is definitely a mistake, and will get us, will lead to a lot of distortions and distractions and a lot of fear and anxiety, the way that it has for so long. And I think a reassessment of, again, the death to life to death and on process will allow for some fuller understanding and alleviation of the fear that's always, or in so many cases, tied to ideas of death and rebirth, or just death and the finality of death. And so as far as the fear that controls our culture, and the circumstances that are going to allow us to get out, the physical vehicle is going to stay in manifestation on the physical plane until its obligations are met. And once the physical shell has done its work, then it's going to recede and it's going to fade away. And that's the same in all nature. If we can look and watch and study how forms and how, like in the animal kingdom, for instance, certain animal species are they're going to become extinct, and we are constantly finding new species that we didn't realize existed previously, as we're able to penetrate deeper into the Antarctic and deeper into really the superheated regions within like the volcanic areas and underneath geysers and things of that nature. And so we either start discovering extreme conditions where life exists, or we start seeing the recession of life through extinctions. And so we can study this process and we can see that the forms are going to stay on the earth plane as long as they're right and fit and proper and adequate. Once they are no longer adequate for that life form, that form is going to fade away. And so you might have the extinction of a species or a class of people, a race of people, or an ethnicity would be more a better term, because there is only one humanity, our human race, but there are various ethnicities within that. And so certain ethnicities are going to fade, and there's going to be extinction, the dodo bird, and on from there, different examples. Once the form is no longer adequate, that life experience is going to move on to something else. And so you will see an evolution of all the human kingdoms, certainly, but the lesser kingdoms as well. And so that life experience or life essence will find its way. Once the dodo bird went the way of the dinosaur, so to speak, that life essence found its way into some new species. Was it a new bird species? Perhaps. But that life energy did find a transition point to some greater expression. That's just the way of nature. That's the way of evolution. And so I don't know specifically what form that may have taken, but that is the way that our evolutionary process works. And so we find that once the form is no longer adequate, the life essence moves on. And so we can see, again, that demonstrating itself. And we can see, if we could study a person's different lives and see how their life experience has culminated and how, they moved through the various levels of awareness and moved on to perhaps like the condition of a Gandhi or a Jesus, or these great figures that we look to throughout history that have stood head and shoulders above the average humanity and have achieved a bit more. They've extended the bounds of our human thinking, of our creative capacity, of our level of understanding and awareness, and they've set the benchmark for something greater to be added on and achieved afterwards. And so we see this culmination taking place, and we see how the life essence moves through the form and discards the form as it's no longer adequate. So we move from form to form, and we take on that experience through each form. Once we're in kindergarten, we're little and we get certain life experience. First grade, a little bigger, a little different body experience. Even though it's within the same physical vehicle, it's, a different level of perception and awareness. And then high school, college, adult life, on and on. It's the same kind of thing, that we continually move through different levels of growth and expanding our awareness. Seldom do we learn less during the preceding life. We constantly learn more, although it may not seem as if everybody's here learning the life lessons. Just simply being on the planet as a human, experiencing life, is a tremendous education in and of itself. And this is not the easiest school to navigate through or graduate from in relation to other schools on other globes in this system and elsewhere. And so we have a really special duty and task here. And the sooner we can get over the fear that's ingrained in us based on ideas of death and rebirth, not so much rebirth, rather, I need to get back to just the death and the finality of death. Once we get past that finality and understand it's just a transition point to another transition point and to another unfolding, then we can start to make some real gains. And again, once science starts to comprehend more so the real nature of the soul as actual, factual, provable, and scientific, then we can make gain greater ground in achieving a greater understanding, and that will become common knowledge among the masses, and that anxiety and fear can be alleviated. And part of the illusion, because the astral or emotional plane is also an illusion generating aspect of ourselves as well. Our dreams and desires, illusions, aspirations, goals, ambitions, all these things are tied up in this realm or area. And so as we lose those, this starts to dissipate and starts to have less of a sway and a hold on us, and we can be free to perceive more to the mental and the clarity that the will of God offers. That's the will nature, the mental plane arena. And so we can have more clarity as we wade through the astral mirage, illusion, the Maya, the glamour, all those things that are associated with all that. And so it's a process, an ongoing process of evolution and gaining awareness and understanding and growing. We're all growing and we're all taking in these life lessons. Some are going to take them in a little bit, take the lessons to heart a bit more than others and make greater use of their time. Some are going to squander their opportunity and just be so materialistic in their workings and their dealings on the physical plane that they gain only little and incrementally, small increments. And so it's all up to us really as to how much we choose to gain and take in during any one life experience. There's so much on this planet that can be experienced and gained and understood and delved into if we just want to open ourselves up to it. To shun or shut off any aspect of our human experience, I think, is a tremendous mistake, because every aspect of this world and everything that pans out, takes place, and pervades this globe and our awareness is part of our humanity, and we should embrace it and use it as a learning tool. That's what I really, really highly recommend, that people use this life experience as a learning tool, this vehicle for the betterment of not only yourself, but if possible, those around you, and to be that lighted living link that can demonstrate no fear and lack of uncertainty, clear vision, be, forward thinking, battle ready, and be, one-pointed and directed in their focus, and so they can get more things done. We can do that if we choose, or we can, again, take the slow route. It's really up to us, and some are going to feel they have one lifetime to get it done. If that's the case, it really boggles my mind that people are sometimes so materialistic and so anti-spiritual in their life endeavors if they really firmly believe there's only a one-time chance at it. I think that's part of our intuitive knowing that there's more than just this life existence, because if people really had that intuitive knowing that there was only one chance, they would be much more, I think, teetotalers in some respects, or they would be much more inclined to want to live a life example more akin to following the example of Jesus through Christ, and some of these examples through history that have been, again, the high benchmark or the high watermark for our human accomplishment. But nonetheless, these people that feel we have a one-shot deal oftentimes just squander away their opportunities, and that to me is very perplexing. Though, on the other hand, the folks that think they have endless opportunities sometimes take the slow route, and they're like, oh, I'll just reincarnate again another time, so no big deal there. Also, last thing I want to mention, the karmic obligations and through reincarnation, that's also called transmigration. Transmigration does not mean that your human soul can go into an animal. In the rarest of rare occasions, and I don't have the numbers or statistics or percentages, but the ultimate rare instance that could potentially take place, because there's, again, flexibility within the laws of karma. But by and large, 99.9% or whatever, at least, you become human again. And that is transmigration or transmutation of the soul is going on through that process. Once you become human, you are human. Again, the opportunity or the chance of one taking a step back down on the evolutionary rung is almost non-existent. It's almost really negligent for me to even mention it, because it's so slim that it takes place. So again, once you're human, you're human. I mean, that's almost a law, really. It's so prevalent in our human nature, in our existence, in our unfolding. So that's probably about the last aspect that I want to get to, and just, again, reiterating the non-fear, that fear of death is a fallacy, and it's a myth. Hello, Line 1, you're on the air.
Corey, good evening to you. This is Peaceful Pete calling.
Hey, thanks for calling. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for letting me call in a couple of times before. I really appreciate your show. And one thing you were talking about, which earlier on, talking about dreams and I would say esoteric symbology that's embedded. My belief is that it's more or less something we're born with, because it's a part of a universal consciousness that's within our DNA structures.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And word of caution, then encouragement, my friend. I really am very hazy and cautious about, what's going on now in aspects of DNA manipulation.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Due to that one blessing that we do have called that divine spark within.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all part of a manuscript that I'm currently writing, and hopefully will be published, and hopefully meet you at that Wednesday show at that Opal place.
Hey, please, by all means, head on up.
I'd like
I
to
look
meet
forward
you.
to talking to you.
We have a common friend. It's my twin sister.
Okay.
She's spoken to you before.
Okay, wonderful.
Anyway,
yeah,
but something I want to say is also no one should really fear death at all.
No.
You know, it's a mystique. It's something based on someone's blind faith in what other people say, because it was part of this book. What I'm trying to say is, you mentioned that we do have access to that higher plane in our sleep state, and also through the transcendental in your musical journeys that we take in meditation.
Oh, without
But it's
question.
also available in your conscious state as well. When I was working with the Native Americans up in northern Washington, which is, I need to get access for them to say that it's okay to mention their name in their sacred spot where I was at, practicing the law of one. But something that happened was a burning bush experience. And that's something where Scripture, the Bible says it's something you cannot place words on.
No,
And it's something you can walk away going, I think I know what Adam and Eve felt like being naked in the presence of their Creator, you know. And following that came a message, which is basically the basis of this book. The encouragement is for others to, once they have an awakening of any type, is to continue following it, because that's that subtle tug of the Spirit telling you, you know, there's an awakening happening, and your path is enlightened. Just keep following something. And that's when we get stuck in our material nature versus something else. I know my life has been completely transformed, and hopefully in due process, my gift back is my own experience, without having some psychotherapist say, Pete, I think you need to be on some meds here. No one has burning bush experiences, you know. But it's a wonderful thing. Do not fear death at all. It's just a sort of transformation into a different state. And it gives me a better appreciation for the multiple of religions, which I needed to study to follow that I wasn't going crazy. These things do happen.
Sure.
Through Native American spiritual belief, Merkaba mysticism and their Kabbalah, into Buddhist Tibetan thought, and along the lines of what you're speaking of, Tibetan Book of the Dead is a wonderful process that Carl Jung had a great preface to write on, and he dealt extremely well versus what was going on earlier on in psychoanalysis, dealing with our spiritual nature when it comes to dream work and dream symbologies and the hierarchies in there with the archetypes. And people should know that these are parts of our everyday process that we experience at night. And if we become more aware of how it works in our lives through dream analysis, being cautious along the way of knowing what their present, their past, and their hopeful states are in life, then they are guided truly, because that was my process in life. And it's a wonderful thing, and I think I know you have a fantastic show. I'll keep watching on Fridays. Take care, my friend.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're going to wrap up the Friday thing at the end of the month, and we're going to shoot for Thursdays at 9 p.m. on Channel 11, but I'll reiterate that more so as we know more for certain. Yes, the archetypes are the signposts for us. When we are able to ascertain and maintain our awareness at those levels, we have those signposts available for us, and those archetypes that are universal to all humanity and really all beings universally can relate to these signposts or guide marks that allow us that understanding and that recovering of what we've know eternally and internally, but have to recover. And I encourage you to continue with the book by all means. I look forward to speaking to you about that in particular, and just the other things that you added were very on cue as well. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Hello, caller, are you on the air?
Hello.
How's it going?
Hi. You bring up a most interesting topic, and I have many questions concerning reincarnation.
I know you do, but
over
please
the
continue.
years.
Yeah, I know. You struggle with that one quite a bit, don't you?
Do you know me? Okay, hey, but anyway, like, to suffer bad karma, that means, in certain cases, other beings have to commit a bad against you, and so it's kind of interesting to see how that all works out, because in God's mind, because, I mean, someone else has to commit a bad because you did, so that they can do a bad against you and you can suffer the karma. But not all bad karma involves living beings, of course. I mean, it could be other things like circumstances affecting you karmically. Also, like, I guess if a race is extinguished, like, the American Indians
Yes.
to a certain extent.
Right, yes, yes.
Somehow, well, I mean, it seems like the genocide against them was a wrong to begin with.
But, okay, look at it this way. If that was a culmination of a previous transgression, you know what I mean, and that was their comeuppance, even though they may not seemingly have deserved it, you know, a lot of things with karmic payback or what have you don't seem right. They seem unjust, like a little baby dying. How can you even justify that? But when you look at trace it back, then you start to understand more about it. The cultural things or the ideas of civilization rising and falling, that's how the life energy moves through. I mean, that was the whole idea of the manifest destiny, that the American continent was going to be taken over and the Indians were going to be, you know, relegated to a smaller role. That's just a cyclic unfolding that was, unfortunately, as it may seem, right and proper. Because don't look at the form, the individual Indians' bodies. Think about their collective soul and the energy that the American Indians have as a collective, you know, all their myths and all the energy and all the legends and everything that people accomplished and stood for still is maintained, and we grow from that. So they didn't die for no reason.
And another thing, as far as like the Hispanics becoming the majority of America within less than 50 years,
right,
by the year 2040, or yeah, you know, it's like that's interesting as far as comparing it, you know, throwing karma into
well, that
has
a whole other, that has another, I could do a whole show on that, and I probably will in some point in time.
And, you know, all these different books on reincarnation and spirituality, and I've read a lot. You know, some books talk about 3 years between lifespans, but that would be, I guess, ordinary lower beings. And then you've said on a previous show, maybe a couple of years ago, about the average span of life in the spirit world between lives on the physical plane is like 700 to 1,000 years.
And it can be in some cases. Not in every case, though, but it can be, depending, again, on our awareness. You know.
But I'd like to get together with you sometime, I guess, at Opal Divines, if I felt that I could bring about all the questions and also insights that I have on reincarnation, and perhaps get a fuller view, or get
absolutely.
your viewpoint on the topic, because I can't ask enough questions or get enough answers or say enough things on reincarnation on this soapbox, you know?
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Is there anything else? Yeah, you're more than welcome to do that. So upcoming on the 15th or the next third Wednesday, whenever. All right. Anything else you can add?
Keep Austin white.
I don't know about all that, man. I like the diversity myself, quite frankly. But hello, Austin. Or hello, caller.
Buster speaks.
All right. Thanks for calling. Have a nice evening. Hello, caller. You're on the line one.
FBU.
Thank you for that call.
Here.
Hello, caller. You're on the line.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I was just wondering, we see this topic, death and life.
Right.
I was just curious, where do you think we go when you die?
Well, I just spent about an hour discussing a lot
I
of
just flipped the
aspects
channel
about
to you, bud.
You go to a place where there's all aspects are the same as far as heaven, hell, purgatory. All those things are different polarities of one level. So you go to the extreme end, the most dense or lower aspect of that. If you're in a hell condition, you go to the higher, lighter, more refined end of the spectrum. If you're more of a virtuous and spiritually nature or minded person.
Let me ask you something.
Sure,
Why you see all these old folks, they start going to a church when they get older. Isn't that something that you just want to think on, so makes you feel more comfortable, because you know you're going to die?
Yeah, I think it gives people comfort, certainly. Anytime somebody's going to, thank you for your call, anytime somebody's going to approach a religion, they're seeking something. They're looking for something that's not inside themselves. They're looking to bring inside something into themselves, or they're looking to discover something inside themselves they're not aware of. And so certainly those are tools to do that. And if you feel like you're going to be passing from the earth plane, yeah, you might want to cozy on up. Certain people also look at that as insurance. Oh, I need to go back to church because I need to get right with God because I'm going to die soon and I need to be on the good foot or else I'm going to be on the hot foot. That's how some people look at it. So at any rate, hello, caller, you on the air?
Hi. The time between life and death and rebirth.
Yes.
How long do you suppose it is? I guess it's different for everyone, but wouldn't it be in a different plane? So wouldn't it could be for a second here, but thousands of millions of years there?
Almost. I wouldn't say it would be a second in our perception on the Earth plane,
Well,
but it might be
okay,
like
yeah.
10 years, 15 years, 5 years, as short as that. I wouldn't think it'd be a lot. I'm just kind of going by my understanding and my intuition and, what
Okay.
I've read and what have you. I wouldn't imagine it being less than 5, 10, 15, something like that. You know what I mean? As far as the time factor for our physical perception. But when you're on that, in the afterlife realm, you don't understand time. Time doesn't exist for you. So, seconds ticking by, you don't think about time. It doesn't mean anything to you.
You can't perceive it, yeah.
Right.
In a certain religion I've read about, or I don't even know if maybe it's just a theory, is that we went through the zodiac cycle of Cancer, Aries, just everything.
Aries, Taurus, Pisces. We're finishing up Pisces and we're moving into...
No, I mean individually. Like,
oh, yes,
if
that
you're
takes
born
place
in
too.
one, do you just go through the
Absolutely.
cycle normally?
Not,
in your opinion?
it wouldn't necessarily be in ordered fashion because you're going to find yourself in the life circumstances that are proper for you. So a whole lot of factors come together to make that decision when you pick your parents and you pick that life that you're going to come back into or create, when you're coming back in as a new child. And so a lot of factors come into being. So I wouldn't say you go through the zodiac in succession from like, oh, I was Taurus, now I'm Gemini, something like that. It's going to depend, and all. But yes, you will eventually go through all the zodiac many times.
But would that just conclude your whole life cycle, or
Not
if
just
you haven't
12.
learned what you should have in your personality when it's represented by some particular zodiac sign, do you just
Well, if you were
redo it
falling
over
short,
again?
well,
Or
I would think,
would
unless you guys don't have much time left, if you were falling short in some quality that a particular zodiac sign could offer you, like if you needed test or trial in your life, Scorpio would probably be the sign that you were going to be involved in. If you had more of a devotional nature and you were more idealistic and more dreamy and kind of, thinking along those terms, and desirous of things, and you could picture and visualize things really well, probably Pisces would be something that would be your thing. It would really depend from person to person. But yeah, I would say if that's what you were asking, I'm not sure entirely, but zodiac qualities are going to tie in from person to person, and I think will allow you to fill in the gaps, fill in what you need to fulfill your life's journey. Hello, caller, you on the air? Thank you, appreciate that. Hello, caller, you on the air? Okay. All right, well, I'm probably not going to grab any more calls. We're really quickly running out of time here. I just want to, again, remind people about the ACTV producers meeting. That's Tuesday the 14th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's out front here. Metaphysical Philosophical, next Wednesday the 15th. Opal Divines, 8 p.m. At the upstairs portion, look for myself or Jeff. We stay till really whenever everybody's getting ready to leave. Don't forget to check out Therefore I Am, Tuesday. Actually, we're going to be doing the E4 coming up pretty soon on Jeff's show and my show. Don't forget to check out Reality Expander. It's every Thursday, Channel 16, 10 p.m. And we're going to be here for the remainder of the month, Fridays, 8 p.m., Channel 10. But we are looking to move in our next series upcoming to Thursdays, 9 p.m., Channel 11. And we'll be able to have more of a viewing audience. We'll be able to get to Cedar Park and what have you. So that's our hope. And I want to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. I want to thank Austin. You guys have a nice evening. Take care. Bye.